Jack Bennett stared out the viewport as the transport ship approached the massive diplomatic station. The structure hung in space like a gleaming metal flower, its petals forming docking bays for vessels from across the galaxy. Orbiting Proxima Centauri, humanity's first extrasolar colony, the station represented a neutral meeting ground between Earth and the Galactic Concord. Jack adjusted his simple navy blue suit and ran a hand through his graying hair. 6 months ago, he had been teaching linguistics at a small university in Idaho. Now he was about to become the first human to formally meet representatives of 7 alien species. "Professor Bennett, we're preparing to dock," said the pilot over the intercom. "The Concord representatives are already requesting to know the size of your security detail." Jack smiled. "Tell them I came alone." The silence that followed spoke volumes. Finally, the pilot responded. "Sir, the Volhari delegation has a 12-member honor guard. The Bentari brought 6 security officers. Even the Ellerin have ceremonial protectors." "I understand," Jack said, "but Earth's position remains unchanged. I'll disembark alone and unarmed." The transport glided into the docking bay. Through the viewport, Jack could see the welcoming parties of the various species. The Volhari stood tallest, reptilian figures in ornate armor bearing ceremonial weapons. Their scales gleamed under the artificial light. Beside them, the blue-skinned Bentari waited in perfect formation, their 4 arms held behind their backs in what Jack recognized as a posture of alert readiness. The airlock hissed open. Jack took a deep breath and stepped forward, carrying only a small case containing diplomatic credentials and personal items. No weapons, no guards, no displays of military might. A murmur rippled through the assembled aliens. A tall Volhari with elaborate scale ridges stepped forward, yellow eyes narrowing. "I am High Commander Zolthrak of the Volhari Empire, senior representative of the Galactic Concord," the alien said, voice translated through Jack's earpiece. "Where is your security detail? Ambassador Bennett, where are your warriors?" Jack extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I have none, High Commander. Earth sends me alone and unarmed, in the spirit of peaceful cooperation." Zolthrak did not take the offered hand. Is this some form of insult? Or does Earth consider this meeting so unimportant they send a single unarmed civilian? On the contrary, Jack replied, "Earth considers this meeting so important that we chose to demonstrate our peaceful intentions in the clearest way possible." He smiled. "I am a professor of linguistics and cultural studies. I'm here to learn about your civilizations and find common ground for our peoples." The Volhari commander made a sound that Jack's translator didn't catch, possibly laughter or scorn. "The Concord has stood for 2,000 years, human. We have protocols, ceremonies. Displays of strength are not threats but signs of respect." A smaller figure stepped forward from the Ellerin delegation. Unlike the militant stance of the Volhari, this alien moved with fluid grace, their pale violet skin almost luminescent. "I am Nella, representative of the Ellerin worlds," she said. "Your approach is unusual, Ambassador Bennett, but intriguing." Jack nodded to her. "Different species, different customs. We have much to learn from each other." High Commander Zolthrak made a cutting motion with his hand. "The diplomatic reception will begin in 3 hours. You will be shown to your quarters." He turned sharply, his honor guard following in perfect formation. As the delegations dispersed, Jack caught Nella watching him with obvious curiosity. Several other representatives were whispering among themselves, occasionally glancing his way. The human ambassador smiled to himself. Their reactions told him everything he needed to know about the true nature of this peaceful galactic concord. Earth's intelligence had been correct. What they faced was not a federation of equals, but an empire in all but name, with the Volhari firmly at the top. Jack knew he had no military power to back his words. Earth's fleet was tiny compared to the forces commanded by the Concord species, but as he followed a station attendant to his quarters, he felt confident nonetheless. Sometimes the absence of weapons spoke louder than their presence. The grand reception hall of the diplomatic station gleamed with polished surfaces and soft, ambient lighting. Jack entered the room and immediately felt dozens of alien eyes turn to study him. He had chosen to wear his same simple navy suit rather than anything more elaborate. No medals, no insignia of rank, nothing to suggest power or authority. Jack watched as the other ambassadors circulated through the room. Each was flanked by at least 2 guards, and all wore ornate clothing that signified their status. The Volhari representatives were particularly impressive, their scaled bodies adorned with metal plates that caught the light with every movement. Ambassador Bennett, High Commander Zolthrak approached, towering over Jack. 2 guards followed a precise 3 steps behind him. I have reviewed Earth's file. Your planet has only achieved faster than light travel within the last century. Most species at your development stage would not be granted full diplomatic recognition. Jack nodded. We appreciate the Concord's willingness to meet with us as equals. A sound like grinding stones emerged from Zolthrak's throat, which Jack's translator didn't convert. Equals. An interesting choice of words. The Concord operates on principles of order and hierarchy. Each species contributes according to their strengths. Before Jack could respond, a server approached with drinks. Jack accepted a glass containing a clear blue liquid. You drink without having it tested. Zolthrak's yellow eyes widened slightly. Should I be concerned? Jack asked, pausing with the glass halfway to his lips. It would be a grave diplomatic incident if harm came to you, Zolthrak said. But in your position, I would exercise more caution. Jack set the glass down untouched. Thank you for the advice. As Zolthrak moved away to speak with the Bentari delegation, Jack felt someone approach from his left. The Volhari test everything 3 times before consumption. Nella, the Elloren representative, said quietly. Not because they fear poison, but because it is their way of showing they are too important to take risks. Jack turned to her with interest. The Elloren's violet skin seemed to shimmer under the lights, and her large eyes held an intelligence that immediately impressed him. Is that why your guards stand further back than his? Jack asked, noting the Elloren security detail kept a respectful distance. A smile played on Nella's lips. You notice much, Ambassador Bennett. Yes, in Concord protocols, the distance of security personnel indicates status. The Volhari invented most of these rules. And where should my guards be standing, if I had them? For an unknown species just joining. At your shoulder, never more than 1 step away, Nella replied. The fact that you have none has created quite a stir. Jack looked around the room, taking in the complex dance of diplomacy playing out in postures, positions, and unspoken rules. The Concord seems to have many layers. More than you know, Nella said, her voice dropping lower. What you see as a peaceful federation is something quite different to those of us who have been part of it for centuries. Jack nodded slowly. The Volhari seemed to hold significant influence. Influence? Nella made a gesture that might have been a suppressed laugh. That is a diplomatic way of saying domination. My people have been protected members of the Concord for 300 years. We provide artistic and medical expertise. The Bentari contribute technology. The Xindi offer rare minerals, all while the Volhari provide security. Jack studied her face. And what does Earth have to offer? That is what they are all wondering, Nella replied. The Volhari will make their demands soon enough. They want exclusive mining rights to your system's asteroid belt. Jack kept his expression neutral despite his surprise. Earth's intelligence hadn't known the Volhari's specific interests. I should mingle with the other representatives, Jack said. But I'd appreciate the chance to learn more about Elloren culture sometime. A cultural exchange. Nella seemed intrigued. That would be most welcome. The Elloren have not had new artistic influences in many cycles. As Jack moved through the reception, introducing himself to other species, he carefully noted the interactions between delegations. The Volhari clearly stood at the top of an unspoken hierarchy. 3 species, The Ellerin, Benteri, and Xindi seemed to hold middle positions but deferred to the Volhari. The remaining 3 species kept largely to themselves. Jack filed away every detail. He had come unarmed, but information was its own kind of weapon, perhaps the most powerful kind. 3 days after the reception, Jack sat in his quarters reviewing notes when his communication panel chimed. Agent Samantha Wright's face appeared on screen. Though officially Jack's assistant, Samantha was actually Earth Intelligence's top agent on this mission. Professor, we've detected unusual scan patterns directed at Earth. The Volhari are mapping our defenses, she said without preamble. Jack leaned back in his chair. Not unexpected. Have you shared the cultural exchange proposal with Earth's government? Yes. They've approved it. But they're concerned about giving aliens access to Earth while the Volhari are acting aggressively. Tell them that's exactly why we need to do it, Jack replied. Have they approved the person I requested? Samantha nodded. Lisa Ortega is preparing to depart Earth now. She's confused about why a chef from New Mexico is being sent on a diplomatic mission, but she's honored. Good. Let me know when she arrives. Jack ended the call and prepared for his meeting with the Concord representatives. His proposal was simple but unprecedented. A cultural exchange program where representatives from each species would visit Earth while human cultural ambassadors would share their knowledge with the Concord. The meeting room was arranged in a semicircle, with the Volhari delegation seated at the center. Jack noticed how the other species positioned themselves, some closer to the Volhari, others as far away as protocol allowed. The human wishes to address the Concord, announced a small insect-like creature that served as the official protocol officer. Jack stood, conscious of how all eyes focused on him. Representatives of the Galactic Concord, I propose a program of cultural exchange between Earth and your worlds. He outlined his plan, watching the reactions across alien faces. The Volhari remained impassive, while the Ellerin and Benteri showed clear interest. What advantage does Earth gain from this exchange? Zolthrak asked when Jack finished. Knowledge, Jack replied simply. Humans are curious by nature. We learn by experiencing new things, new ways of thinking. An unusual request, Zolthrak said. We will consider it. To Jack's surprise, the Volhari approved the exchange the next day, though with strict limitations on the number of visitors in each direction. A week later, Lisa Ortega arrived at the station. The middle-aged chef brought cases of ingredients, cooking equipment, and endless enthusiasm. You want me to cook for aliens? She asked Jack, eyes wide with excitement as they walked the corridor to her quarters. Will they even like our food? Can they eat it? Our medical team has analyzed their digestive systems, Jack explained. Most can eat modified versions of our food. But this isn't just about feeding them, Lisa. It's about sharing our culture through something universal. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. Food brings people together. Always has. The first cultural exchange event was held in a large common area. Lisa had set up a cooking station where she prepared simplified versions of dishes from around Earth. Jack had insisted that she focus on everyday foods rather than luxury items. The alien delegations approached cautiously. The Benteri were the first to try Lisa's cooking, a simple corn tortilla with mild seasoning adjusted for their biology. This was made by hand. The Benteri representative asked, watching Lisa work the masa into shape, not by machine or synthesizer. Best way to cook, Lisa said with a smile. My grandmother taught me, her grandmother taught her. Been making these for thousands of years on Earth. Word spread quickly. Even the Volhari representatives eventually approached Lisa's station, asking questions about the cooking process. Jack watched from across the room, noting how Lisa's natural warmth broke through formal diplomatic barriers. Nella approached Jack, holding a small plate. Your food ambassador is more effective than many formal diplomats I have known, she said quietly. Food is honest, Jack replied. It tells the true story of a culture, what they value, what resources they have, how they share with each other. The Volhari are watching your planet closely, Nella warned. They scan your defenses daily. Jack nodded. I know. But what they're looking for doesn't matter as much as what they're finding. And what is that? Jack smiled. Something they don't understand yet. 2 weeks into the cultural exchange program, Jack was reviewing reports in his office when his door chimed. He looked up to see High Commander Zolthrak enter without waiting for permission. 2 Volhari guards took positions at the door. Ambassador Bennett, Zolthrak said, his scaled face unreadable. The time for pleasantries has ended. The Volhari Empire requires a decision from Earth. Jack gestured to a chair. Please sit. What decision do you need? Zolthrak remained standing. Earth must formally join the Concord as a protected member state. We will provide security for your system. In exchange, we require exclusive mining rights to your asteroid belt for the next 100 years. And if Earth declines? Jack asked, keeping his voice level. That would be unwise, Zolthrak said. Those outside the Concord's protection face many dangers in this sector. The threat was thinly veiled. Jack nodded slowly. This is a significant decision. Earth's government will need time to consider. You have 1 standard week, Zolthrak replied. I suggest you recommend acceptance. After the Volhari left, Jack immediately contacted Samantha Wright. The ultimatum has come, he told her. Exactly as we predicted. Earth's council is split, Samantha said. Some want to accept the Volhari terms. They don't think we can win if they attack. They're right about that, Jack admitted. But tell the council I need the full week before responding. And I need to meet with representatives from the Elloran and Bentari privately. Jack arranged separate meetings with both species, carefully avoiding official channels. He met Nella in an observation lounge during the station's night cycle when few would be present. The Volhari have made their demands, Jack said without preamble. Nella nodded. We expected this. They have given similar terms to every world that joins the Concord. And if Earth refuses, they will make an example of your colony on Proxima Centauri first, she said quietly. Then blockade your home system until you accept worse terms. Jack looked out at the stars. The Elloran have been under Volhari control for centuries. If circumstances change, would your people seek independence? Nella's large eyes widened slightly. That is a dangerous question, Ambassador. The Volhari have monitoring devices throughout this station. Not in this section, Jack said. My assistant made sure of it. Nella was silent for a long moment. If circumstances change, she finally said, my people remember what freedom was like. Jack met with the Bentari representative the next day, having a similar conversation. Both species expressed the same sentiment. They would support Earth if they believed it could stand against the Volhari. On the 7th day, Jack received Earth's official response. He read it carefully, then requested a formal meeting with all Concord representatives. The meeting chamber was tense as Jack stood to address the gathered ambassadors. High Commander Zolthrak, representatives of the Galactic Concord, Jack began. I bring Earth's response to the Volhari proposal. Zolthrak leaned forward slightly. I trust your government has chosen wisely. Earth appreciates the offer to join the Concord, Jack said carefully. However, we must respectfully decline the current terms. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Volhari delegation stiffened visibly. Perhaps I was unclear about the consequences of refusal, Zolthrak said, his voice cold. Earth understands the implied threat, Jack replied calmly. But we cannot accept terms that would make us subordinate rather than equal partners. Earth proposes alternative terms for membership, equal trading rights for all Concord species in our system, with no exclusive arrangements. Zolthrak stood abruptly. Your arrogance is astonishing for a species with such limited military capability. The Volhari battle fleet will arrive at your colony within 3 days. Perhaps that will help your government reconsider. As the Volhari delegation stormed out, Jack noticed the looks on the faces of the other species. Some showed fear, others, like Nella, And the Benteri representative showed something else, something that might have been hope. Jack returned to his quarters to prepare for what would come next. Earth could not win a military confrontation with the Volhari Empire, but that had never been the plan. Jack stood at the large viewport in the station's observation deck, watching as the Volhari warships gathered near the jump point. 5 massive vessels had arrived, their hulls covered with weapon ports and energy projectors. They made no attempt to hide their power or their purpose. Impressive, isn't it? High Commander Zolthrak's voice came from behind him. Just one of those ships could reduce your colony to ash. The fleet will depart for Proxima Centauri tomorrow. Jack turned slowly. You haven't attacked yet. That suggests you're still open to discussion. Zolthrak made the grinding sound that Jack now recognized as laughter. Your confidence is puzzling, human. Your world has no defense against our ships. Maybe that's why we focus on building bridges instead of weapons, Jack said. I have a new proposal. Not from Earth's government, but from me personally. Despite himself, Zolthrak looked interested. Speak. Your ultimatum made me realize something. The Concord operates on rigid rules, exclusive rights, hierarchical structures, protected member states. What if there was another way to organize our relationships? Such as, Zolthrak asked, his tone dismissive but his posture attentive. Individual trade agreements between Earth and each Concord species, based on mutual benefit rather than protection, Jack suggested. The Benteri have technology we could use. We have manufacturing methods they might find valuable. The Ellerin have medical knowledge we need. We have art and culture they appreciate. You would bypass the Concord's authority. Zolthrak's voice rose in anger. Not bypass. Expand, Jack corrected. The Concord would still exist, but species could also form bilateral agreements when it benefits both parties. Impossible, Zolthrak said. The Concord functions because of order and hierarchy. Perhaps for the Volhari, Jack replied. But ask the Benteri if they're satisfied with their current arrangement. Or the Ellerin. Zolthrak's eyes narrowed. You have been speaking with them. I've been listening to them, Jack said. There's a difference. Without another word, Zolthrak stormed away. Jack remained at the viewport, watching the warships. Within hours, the Volhari delegation had issued a formal communication rejecting Jack's proposal and reaffirming their ultimatum. What happened next surprised even Jack. The Benteri representative requested a private meeting with him. Your idea has merit, the 4-armed aliens said when they met in a secure location. The Benteri High Council has long been frustrated by Volhari restrictions on our technology trading. Would the Benteri consider a separate agreement with Earth? Jack asked. It would anger the Volhari, the Benteri replied. But if Earth offered something of sufficient value? Jack smiled. What if we offered a new approach to innovation itself? Human invention methods are different from yours. We focus on rapid prototyping, collaboration across disciplines, and entrepreneurship. The Benteri's eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of interest, Jack had learned. Explain this entrepreneurship. For the next hour, Jack outlined how humans built businesses around new ideas, how inventors became business leaders, how competition drove innovation. The Benteri asked many questions, clearly fascinated by concepts that seemed obvious to humans, but revolutionary to a species used to centralize technology development. By the next day, rumors spread throughout the station. The Benteri were considering a separate agreement with Earth. The Volhari were furious, but hesitated to take action against such a valuable member of the Concord. Nella found Jack in the station's garden area. What you have done is unprecedented, she said. No species has ever negotiated separate agreements. The Volhari still plan to attack our colony, Jack replied grimly. Yes, Nella agreed. But now they must consider the consequences beyond just Earth. The Benteri have significant investments in Volhari shipyards. If they withdraw that support, Jack nodded. And how do the Ellerin feel about these developments? Nella's expression shifted to something Jack couldn't quite read. We are watching very closely, Ambassador Bennett. Very closely indeed. As Jack looked out at the artificial garden, he knew the real seeds he had planted were beginning to take root. Seeds of a very different kind. The Volhari attack never came. 3 days passed, then 5, then a week. The warships remained positioned near the jump point, but made no move toward the human colony. Jack knew the Volhari were reconsidering their options, caught between maintaining their authority and avoiding conflict with the Bentari. During this tense waiting period, Gregory Collins arrived from Earth. The media specialist from Chicago brought equipment that confused the station's security scanners. Just broadcasting gear, he explained to Jack in the privacy of the human quarters, but designed to be compatible with all known Concord communication systems. Jack nodded. Can you set up the network we discussed? Already started, Gregory said with a grin. I've made friends with the station's communication techs. Interesting folks, especially the Xindi. Did you know they communicate partly through color changes in their skin? I didn't, Jack admitted. What have you learned from them? The Concord controls information flow tightly. Each species only gets news approved by the Volhari Central Command. The Xindi technicians are frustrated by it. They want access to more information. Then let's give it to them, Jack said. The next day, Jack requested a meeting with all Concord representatives. To his surprise, the Volhari agreed. When the delegates assembled, Jack noticed new tensions in the room. Species that had previously kept their distance from Earth's ambassador now watched him with open curiosity. Representatives of the Concord, Jack began, Earth values transparency in diplomatic relations. Therefore, we propose that all future discussions between our peoples be openly shared with all members. Zolthrak immediately objected. Diplomatic discussions require privacy and discretion. Perhaps in the past, Jack countered. But Earth wishes to build trust. Beginning today, we will broadcast all our diplomatic meetings to anyone who wishes to view them. You cannot do this without Concord approval, Zolthrak said, anger evident in his voice. With respect, High Commander, we can. We will broadcast from our own communication channels. Any species that wishes to receive our transmissions may do so. Jack nodded to Gregory, who activated a small device. Screens around the room lit up, showing the meeting in progress. This meeting is now being transmitted to any receiving station that wishes to tune in, Jack announced, including to all ships in the Concord fleet and to Earth. The chamber erupted in angry shouts from the Volhari delegation, but Jack noticed that none of the other species joined their protests. In fact, several representatives, including Nella, watched with undisguised interest. This is unprecedented, the Bentari representative said when the noise subsided. But intriguing. The Bentari would like to receive all such broadcasts. As would the Ellerin, Nella added quickly. Within days, Gregory had established direct communication links with most Concord species. Human broadcasts became popular throughout the station. Jack made sure the content was varied, not just diplomatic meetings, but also cultural programs about Earth, educational materials, and entertainment. Lisa Ortega hosted a cooking program that became unexpectedly popular. Alien crews gathered to watch her prepare foods from different Earth cultures, explaining the history and significance of each dish. They love her, Gregory told Jack one evening as they reviewed viewing statistics. And not just for the cooking. She tells stories about Earth, about different cultures living together, about how foods and traditions mix and change. That's exactly what we want, Jack said. Ideas spreading naturally. But the Volhari were not idle. Jack was called to an emergency meeting with some at the right. The Volhari have launched an information campaign against you personally, she reported. They're telling the other species that you're manipulating them, that Earth has secret plans to disrupt the Concord. Jack considered this. How are we responding? We're not, Samantha said with a smile. We're just broadcasting the Volhari statements alongside everything else. No commentary. No denial. Perfect, Jack said. Transparency is our best defense. Let everyone see both sides and make their own judgments. What the Volhari failed to understand was that their accusations only increased interest in Earth's broadcasts. Species that had lived under tight information control for centuries were suddenly exposed to new ideas, new ways of thinking, and they were hungry for more. 2 months after Earth's first contact with the Galactic Concord, the diplomatic station buzzed with an energy it had never known before. Species that had barely interacted for centuries now engaged in open discussions. Earth's broadcasts had grown to include educational exchanges, cultural programs, and open forums where representatives could discuss ideas freely. Jack was reviewing reports in his office when an urgent message arrived. The Bentari had called an emergency session of the Concord Council. All representatives were required to attend. When Jack entered the council chamber, he felt the tension immediately. The Volhari delegation appeared agitated, their scales raised in what he had learned was a sign of extreme stress. The Bentari representatives stood at the center of the chamber, all 4 arms held in a formal posture. The Bentari Collective has an announcement. Their lead representative stated once all delegates were seated. After careful consideration, we have decided to reconsider our position within the Concord hierarchy. A shocked silence filled the room. Nothing like this had happened in the 2,000-year history of the Concord. What exactly does this mean? High Commander Zolthrak demanded. The Bentari will no longer accept exclusive technology transfer agreements with the Volhari Empire, the representative continued. We will trade with all species based on mutual benefit, not mandated hierarchy. This violates your treaty obligations. Zolthrak rose to his full height, towering over the Bentari. The consequences will be severe. The Bentari representative remained calm. We understand this is unprecedented, but we have analyzed this decision carefully. The human concept of entrepreneurship and open innovation has shown us another path forward. Zolthrak turned to Jack, fury evident in every line of his body. This is your doing. Earth has deliberately undermined the stability of the Concord. Before Jack could respond, Nella stood. The Ellerin wished to address the council. Jack noticed the Volhari guards shifting nervously around the chamber's edges. The Ellerin worlds have watched these developments with great interest. Nella said, her voice clear and strong. We, too, wish to renegotiate our status within the Concord. The chamber erupted into chaos. The Volhari delegation huddled in urgent discussion, while other species began talking among themselves excitedly. Jack remained seated, watching it all unfold. When order was finally restored, Zolthrak addressed the council again, his voice cold with controlled rage. These actions threaten the very foundation of the Concord. The Volhari Empire cannot allow this disruption to continue. He turned to Jack. Earth is the source of this contagion. We will contain it. Through military action, Jack asked calmly. Our fleet stands ready, Zolthrak confirmed. Your colony will be the first example, then your homeworld. Jack nodded slowly, then stood. I appreciate your transparency, High Commander. In the spirit of openness, I should inform you that Earth has sent ships to Bentari space. Your military vessels would be no match for our fleet, Zolthrak scoffed. We sent no military vessels, Jack replied. Only transport ships carrying educators, artists, business leaders, and cultural ambassadors, all unarmed, just as I arrived here. For what purpose? Zolthrak demanded. The Bentari requested our assistance in implementing new innovation systems, Jack explained. We're sending teachers, not soldiers. The Bentari representative nodded in confirmation. We have indeed invited these human advisors. Any hostile action against them would be considered an attack on the Bentari Collective. Jack watched as Zolthrak processed this information. The Volhari commander was trapped in a diplomatic knot. He could still attack Earth's colony, but doing so would now risk conflict with the Bentari, whose technology was vital to the Volhari fleet. This session is adjourned, Zolthrak finally announced. The Volhari delegation will consult with our leadership. As the council dispersed, Nella approached Jack. A clever move, Ambassador. You have given the Volhari no military target they can strike without consequences. Jack shook his head. Not clever. Just different. Earth learned long ago that ideas move more freely when not carried by warships. As they left the chamber, Jack received an urgent message from Samantha. Reports were coming in from across Concord space. The Xindi, another subject species, had begun their own push for greater independence, and on 2 Volhari colony worlds, local governments had issued statements demanding greater autonomy. The dominoes were falling faster than even Jack had anticipated. 3 weeks of tense waiting followed the Bentari announcement. The Volhari warships remained near the jump point, neither advancing nor retreating. Meanwhile, reports from across Concord space indicated growing unrest. Ideas of independence and equal partnership spread from system to system, carried by the communication networks Gregory had established. Jack was summoned to a private meeting with High Commander Zolthrak. When he arrived at the designated room, he found the Volhari leader alone, without his usual guards. "You have accomplished something remarkable, Ambassador Bennett," Zolthrak said, his voice lacking its usual harsh edge. "In less than 3 months, you have destabilized a system that has maintained order for 2,000 years. "That wasn't my goal," Jack replied honestly. "Earth simply wanted fair treatment and mutual respect. By introducing concepts that undermine the very foundation of the Concord," Zolthrak countered. "Do you know we've lost control of 2 colony worlds already? They demand representation and self-governance, human ideas." Jack remained silent, allowing the Volhari leader to continue. "My superiors have ordered me to crush this rebellion," Zolthrak said. "To destroy your colony as a demonstration, then blockade Earth until you submit." He made a gesture Jack had never seen before, something like resignation. "But our analysts say this would only spread the contagion of your ideas faster." "Ideas can't be destroyed by warships," Jack said quietly. "So we have learned." Zolthrak fixed his yellow eyes on Jack. "The Volhari High Command has authorized me to negotiate new terms. The Concord must change to survive." Jack felt a surge of hope, but kept his expression neutral. "What terms do you propose?" "A new structure," Zolthrak said. "Not a hierarchy, but a council of equals, with decisions made by consensus." The words seemed difficult for him to speak. The Volhari would retain leadership of security matters, but trade and cultural exchange would be open. "A reasonable starting point for discussion," Jack acknowledged. "But any new agreement must include full membership for Earth." "Agreed," Zolthrak said, surprising Jack. "Your world has earned its place." Over the next week, representatives from all Concord species met to draft a new charter. The Galactic Concord would become the Interstellar Union, with each member having equal voting rights. The Volhari would maintain their military role, but with oversight from a council representing all species. On the final day of negotiations, Jack addressed the assembly. "What we've created here isn't just a new agreement. It's a new beginning," he said. "Earth doesn't seek to replace Volhari leadership, but to transform our relationship from one of domination to cooperation." The new charter was signed by all representatives. Jack's hand shook slightly as he added his signature to the document that would forever change humanity's place in the galaxy. 1 month later, Jack prepared to return to Earth. His mission complete, he would be replaced by a permanent ambassador. As he packed his few belongings, Nella visited him one last time. "The Ellerin have a saying," she told him. "The quietest voice sometimes causes the greatest echo. You came unarmed to a place of warriors and changed everything." "Not me," Jack said. "Ideas that humans have been developing for centuries. Equality, transparency, cooperation. I just introduced them to new minds." As Jack boarded the transport that would take him home, he noticed something strange through the viewport. High Commander Zolthrak had come to see him off, and for the first time since Jack had known him, the Volhari leader was without his military escort. When the ship departed, Jack reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had arrived as an ordinary professor from Idaho, sent to represent Earth because traditional diplomats had been deemed too aggressive for first contact. He had come unarmed, bringing only ideas and a willingness to listen. And those simple things had accomplished what no fleet could have achieved. As the diplomatic station shrank to a distant point of light behind him, Jack smiled at the thought of the next Volheri ambassador who would soon arrive on Earth, without weapons or guards for the first time in their history. Sometimes the absence of weapons spoke louder than their presence, and sometimes the most devastating force in the universe was simply a new idea.